Hello, everyone. Welcome to Progress Junior Golf. My name's Steve Jackson, and this is Aaron Cox.
How you going, guys? How is everybody?
All right, good. Right, now this is the Progress Junior Golf Show. It's the third one of the year, the 65th episode since we started this way back in 2022. Now, in the previous two shows this year, Aaron, as you well know, we've talked about what we're looking to achieve with Progress Junior Golf and how this could and should, in brackets, be mirrored in junior golf as a whole. So, in particular, we've been looking at regard values in junior golf. In January, we assessed the affordability of junior golf. Trying to ensure that it was value for money for whatever you were trying to get out there for juniors. Last month in February, we looked at how to help juniors get into the golf industry. Not just as professional golfers, but in other areas as well in the industry. Now, this month, so tonight, we're going to be looking at sustainability in junior golf. Now, massive subject, not just in junior golf, not just in golf, because this is a topic which really, throughout the entire world, I mean, you're Australian, you know how big a thing it is down
absolutely.
In the Southern Hemisphere, same in this part of the world as well. But of course, we have to say, the environment, climate change, is going to impact youngsters more than it will affect people from my generation and your generation as well, Aaron. Because obviously they are the future as well. So let's take a look at these issues then today and try and see if we can find some ways where we can help in junior golf. Right. So today, there's three companies which we're going to be talking about a little bit: Golfing Green, For the Planet, and EcoWow. The three companies who, within the golf industry, they've been making, selling, finding sustainable products. They put it at the heart of their business plan. So I'm delighted to say that Aaron and myself are going to be joined this evening by two of the main people of those organisations as guests. We're going to have Jeff Sampson from EcoWow. He founded also a scheme called Garage to Green, and I'm going to be chatting with him. I actually spoke to him earlier this week, so we've got a pre-recorded interview with Jeff, so we'll hear from him. But live on the show, we're going to have Alex Nicholson from For the Planet as well, so he'll be talking about what he's been doing and some of the things which, hopefully is going to make a big difference. We're also hopeful as well of having George Devane on from Golfing Green, but unfortunately we had some bad news overnight, or she has some bad news overnight. So unfortunately she won't be with us this evening. But I have to say, everyone at Progress Junior Golf passes on our condolences to George and best wishes as well.
Yeah, so, absolutely.
Now, both myself and Alex, actually, we've worked already closely with George in recent weeks, and I think Alex for longer than I have as well. So we're going to do our best to explain what Golfing Green does. But having said that, I'm sure Aaron, you'll be pleased. We'll get her on the show at some point, so therefore we'll get her on a future podcast.
Yeah, absolutely.
A lot more about what she does there. So
it'll be interesting to. The big thing that for me tonight, Steve, is obviously myself as well, learning a lot about these companies of what they're doing to really help the planet in the ways of what, from my point of view of being a golf pro, of how I can then pass on and use trophies and this and that and give to the kids, but it's all recycled and really good, environmentally friendly. So I'm actually looking forward to tonight of learning myself a little bit more about these products that Alex and the guys are working so hard to help the environment.
Yeah, no, I have to say, I did speak to Aaron yesterday, and I thought I better find out what your background is in sustainability, kind of thing. So you are my guinea pig this evening. So we're going down the scales here. Alex probably knows a lot about it. I know a little bit about it, and you might know a little bit less about it, kind of thing. So you're the person who's going to go, really? I didn't know that, So,
well,
but this podcast,
I've got the notepad and pen ready to go, so I can learn
absolutely
and take as many notes as I can.
Good for you. Right, now we have to then get our guest on, then, don't we? So let's introduce then Alex Nicholson, then from For the Planet. Then let's bring him on.
Evening, guys.
Good evening, Alex. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you, Steve. It's been a busy day, but absolutely delighted to join the podcast. Yeah.
Yes. Right, now, as Aaron alluded to there, then obviously this is a subject whereby I think a lot of people have got a lot to learn from this subject, haven't they? Because sustainability is it's very complicated. There's lots of things we're going to have to deal with. We're going to be talking about lots of different aspects of it during this show. So, we might be quizzing you quite a bit. Shall we say that?
Are you ready? Fire as many questions at me as you can.
Right.
I'll try and respond to as many as possible. I don't know how long you guys have got. Aaron's got his pen and paper ready. I think the thing is with sustainability is like you know, myself as a bit of a specialist in this area, yeah, we could talk. The guys that know this sort of thing can talk for hours and not even scratch the surface with sustainability. You know, some issues can be quite complex, and there's plenty for us to go through. That's for sure.
Right, now we have got Jeff Sampson on from EcoWow as well. We're going to play a short clip of the video with him in a second, though. But the first question I asked him, I'm going to ask you first of all, Alex, because the question I asked him was, why is sustainability such an important issue then? So I'll get your take on it first of all, and then we'll hear from Jeff.
Yeah, sustainability is absolutely key. I think we're all fully aware of climate change and the impact that climate change is having on the planet, the increase in temperatures globally, the increase in sea levels that results in, and that effectively, if we continue along the same track and the same, I was going to say progress, but it's definitely not progress. The same path that we're continuing to follow at the moment, the world is not going to be in a very good place in 30 plus years time. We're going to see radical climate change, hotter climates, bad weather. You know, there are so many results of climate change. So that's why sustainability is important. You know, sustainability can be incorporated into any business and everybody's everyday life. You know, it's the products that we decide to purchase or hopefully try and purchase less of. It's the cars we drive, it's the food we eat and drink. It's literally everything that we do. So as I said just now, there's quite a lot for us to cover here, but that's why sustainability is key. You know, what we're doing and the emissions related to every product that we purchase, buy, use are having a direct influence on climate change, and more needs to be done to help reverse climate change, to maintain the kind of climate that we have across the world currently.
So when we talk about sustainability, obviously it's a very broad subject, and it's been a very hot subject for the last few years. Across obviously the climate change and around about the world. But how can, and I know probably Steve was starting to go into this, but then how do we then start connecting golf and, more importantly, junior golf to that broad, big subject?
Yeah, great question, Aaron. I think, like I said then, golf especially has a massive impact, right? So if you think about how much land in the UK and across the world is covered by golf courses, there's things like water management plans there. You know, the amount of irrigation and mains water that golf courses can typically use to maintain a certain condition throughout the year. You know, we're draining mains water resources. Products that are available, bottles that are typically consumed in the average pro shop with water and soft drinks, that kind of thing. Plastics in things like teas and a lot of packaging. Obviously, you know, we know that typically less than 50% of all plastic ends up being recycled, and if it doesn't get recycled, it can take 500 years to biodegrade. So there's the whole purchasing side there as well. I mean, there's loads of bits to cover, but I think it's really key, especially. I mean, I'm hopeful with this, that the younger generation and hopefully the juniors, you know, there's a lot more education in schools now. There's a lot more education from things that you guys are doing with junior golf tours as well around sustainability. So I'm hopeful that the younger generations coming through are going to take this a lot more seriously than the generations that are particularly in charge of a lot of golf venues in the UK at the moment. And we all know the typical demographic of that members committee and the owners of these golf clubs that make decisions. You know, sustainability is absolutely just not on the radar for these guys.
Agree.
And you know, partly down to their age, I would imagine that, you know, they're not going to be around in 40 plus years time to see the detrimental effects of climate change, like I said earlier. But I'm sure they have family and younger family that will be. But like I said, I think, yeah, with juniors, if we can spread the message as much as possible, like these are going to be the guys that carry the message of sustainability on, right? Beyond talking like we're all quite old, right? But beyond time, so.
Right, let's hear from Jeff then, because the question I raised to him, then you answered your take on it. Why is sustainability such an important issue? This is what Jeff had to say about it.
I guess we've only got one planet, haven't we? So if we don't look after it, nobody else is going to. You know, there's a commonly used phrase is kind of one planet living. And every year there's a kind of a cutoff point that we called Earth Overshoot Day. And that's the point at which we've kind of used all the resources that the planet can kind of sustain. And each year that comes further and forward in time, which kind of reflects the, that we're effectively taking more material out of the planet than it can kind of sustain over a longer period of time. So ultimately it's down to us to sort that issue out.
And sorting that issue out is not easy, is it? Because it's so complicated, so many different factors involved with it, and so many people have been talking about this for a long period of time as well. So where do you even start trying to do it?
Yeah, I mean, it's not easy, but I guess if everybody does a small thing, those small steps do add up. I think where we've got to a bit of a problem is kind of something we call the linear economy, which is like you take something, you make something, and then you throw it away. It's not kind of keeping materials and products in use for long enough. We've got a bit of a sort of throwaway mindset, and ultimately sort of that's a function of products being so cheap. So people years ago would have fixed things, kept them going longer, but now often it's just cheaper to buy something new than necessarily get it kind of mended. So we've got a number of kind of problems that we need to kind of address, I think.
And one of those solutions to that problem is what you call, or is the circular economy. So just explain what the circular economy is.
So the circular economy is ultimately keeping products in use for a much longer period of time. People often kind of confuse it with recycling, think it's just another term for recycling. But ultimately, recycling is kind of keeping materials in use. But whenever you kind of recycle something, you're breaking it down first, which requires a whole bunch of energy, to then turn it into something new. The circular economy is about keeping those products in use for much longer, for what they were originally designed to do. And it's ultimately about getting a better return on investment on what went into those products to start with. So it includes various things such as different business models. So leasing is a good example of a circular business model, where we're trying to sort of break a bit of the sort of view that people think, oh, well, I have to own something. That's not necessarily the case. As long as you can access that product or that service, you don't necessarily need to own it. And you may actually be able to access something better by, borrowing it, renting it, leasing it for a period of time, as opposed to something that you've purchased that then loses value and that maybe you don't actually use that often.
But within the golf industry as well, that model you're talking about there can apply to lots of different factors, lots of different areas of the golf industry, can't it?
It can, yeah. But again, I think where golf is probably, it struggles is big businesses within golf. They're geared up to sort of sell new products all the time. You'll always see a new driver coming out, each year, claiming to be able to make you hit it 5 yards further, less blade across all the golf course. It'll revolutionize your game. The fundamentals are that if you're not that great at golf, you should probably spend some money on lessons rather than new equipment. But it's an example of, where business drives new products, and we need to sort of re-educate perhaps both players of golf and suppliers into the golf industry around actually trying to make some of those products easier to maybe upgrade over time or repair, refurbish, so that actually, we're getting more life out of some of those products.
So that's Jeff Sampson there talking about the linear economy, the circular economy. Now, I'll be honest, I wasn't aware of the circular economy. I did the same thing he said. I'd mistaken it for recycling. Would that be fair comment with you as well, Aaron, or were you more aware of it than I was, perhaps?
No, I straight away, like, you think of recycling, you think I'm doing my part for the environment. I'm making sure all the plastics are together and the glass together and everything can be broken down. But it's interesting that's not the actual meaning of what the circular economy is. So yeah, that was very interesting. But it definitely, the one thing that really, I think that I resonated when I wrote it down straight away was the fact that he was talking about leasing, not just thinking like you need to buy it and own it. So it's got more of a life cycle. So that was quite interesting, because it's like, I'm trying to think of then how can you, it's like with a car, you can lease a car, which is what he was talking about, and leasing something, and then you can move it on, but then someone else will then use it. How do you then transfer that into the golf industry when, like Jeff rightly mentioned right at the end there, you've got these companies that are bringing out a new driver almost every 12 to 18 months, saying that they can make you hit the ball further and it'll be less dispersion, and it's the next best thing. How do you get these companies to then understand, well, look, either get a driver and you don't own it, but when you bring out a new driver, you send that one back and we'll send you another one, but then we can reuse that product for the future, or pass down or sell down to other parts of the world that may not be able to have that kind of money to buy a brand new one. So it's how do you then start getting these bigger companies to understand how to use that kind of concept with new golf clubs? I did say,
Alex, we're going to ask some tough questions here, and you might not have the answer to these, but it's a very good question, isn't it?
Great question. I think the point that really resonates with me that Jeff's mentioned there in that video is the business models changing. Because effectively, and you guys use hardware there as a really good example. And I actually used to be the golf sales manager of a hardware brand in golf. So I can definitely give you a good bit of insight into this. Like, it is so commercially driven, that business. There are, that was a Japanese company that I was working for. And, the meetings we had with Japan on new product launches and sales targets. And, it is just such a commercially profit driven business model in hardware. And like you mentioned, leasing there, Aaron, but you put your, you think of yourself as one of those commercial directors of a big American company that sponsors your Rory McIlroys and Tiger Woodses. And, these guys pay millions of dollars a year to sponsor the top players in the world.
To get their products out there.
To get their products out there, and they have to make a return on their investments, right? So that's where this whole commercially driven business model is set up. And it's one thing that's always annoyed me really in golf. Like, I've worked in golf shops and bits as well, and the brand reps. And like I said, I actually used to be one of these. I'm not anymore, luckily.
Do you see an appetite to change from those companies, though?
I found it really difficult, Steve, to be honest, when I was there. Every conversation was new product development, sales targets. When can we get this pre-book of product delivered into stores and the money coming
new R&D?
New R&D and tech. And these are tech companies. They are focused on trying to make golf easier to play and produce equipment that's as good as everybody, every other brand out there. It's not helped by the fact it's such a competitive space in golf, in hardware, clothing, balls, you name it. There's a lot of companies making a lot of different products, all fighting for a small market share. And the way they do that is to drive the commercials as much as possible.
So, Aaron, you're a golf professional. You do coaching. Yeah. How often do you have that conversation, the one which was mentioned there by Jeff, whereby it's not the equipment which is going to make you better. It's the coaching. It's the playing which is going to make you better. How often do you have that conversation?
I have that conversation with Poly members every day of the week, Steve. That's a very valid point. And I was actually almost going to lead in that when Alex was talking, but that people have look, and this comes back to what Alex was saying about these big companies, that they have targets, they have return on investments, they have to get their products out there. Now, the golf market these days is so driven by commercial that golfers nowadays are so consumed about what they see on TV. Oh, this is the next best driver. Oh, well, if that's the next best driver, well, I better go buy one. Now, the golf drive, that new driver, will do nothing for their game. I can't see 5 yards being worth 500 quid. So I always say, well, no, leave the club alone. Leave that 600-pound driver. And I say this to a lot of people. Look, yes, I'm a golf pro, but I'm not a salesman. I'm not going to just try and sell you a 600-pound driver to make my boss happy if that person's going to go get it. Go, well, that was crap. What's it done for my game? Whereas I could say, right, hold off that. Spend about an hour and a half, 2 hours with me over 3 or 4 or 5 lessons. And then I'll make you a better player, but I'll get you a better understanding of what that club can actually do. But you go back to, I want to go back a little bit as well with the ways of what Alex was saying, like the golf clubs and these brands, they bring out all these new drivers every year. I did a clean out of the pro shop that I'm at in Blackwell Grange here. We did it, my boss and I, we cleaned out our back room about 3 weeks ago, a month ago, and because we ran out of room. And my boss, Peter, did 4 trips to the tip. And 2 of those trips were literally golf clubs. We're talking irons, woods, broken clubs, wedges, putters that were probably, all right, they were older clubs. They were 10, 15, 20 years old. Now, we pulled out of all those golf clubs, we pulled a massive chunk. We chopped the heads off, kept the shafts, and then we use those shafts now for repairs. So if we need to extend a golf club, we've now got an absolute heap of clubs and shafts just to go bang, straight in, lengthen the clubs by, or fix a golf club that's been snapped. But we keep that golf club intact. So in a way, helping this subject, but it's hard to get the player and the golfer to really understand that, hey, learn your swing instead of just go buy another golf club.
Right, it's fascinating. Obviously, you've not heard the interview with Jeff, but we are going to be talking about some very similar scheme which he did a few years ago. But we'll hear more from Jeff now. We're obviously talking about how I asked you the question, Alex, about the appetite of companies to embrace sustainability and how much about that. What about greenwashing? I wanted to talk to Jeff about greenwashing, and the simple question was, what is greenwashing? And this is what Jeff had to say as far as that is concerned.
Greenwashing is fundamentally where a business is making some misleading environmental claims. And in essence, it's become a bit of a sort of marketing tool. I guess as you've seen things such as the Blue Planet phenomena, where society as a whole has become a little bit more aware of, the issues with plastic pollution, and that, fundamentally, we want to do something about this. Businesses will jump onto that bandwagon, some with wholly the right intentions, others who will see it as an opportunity, where they'll make claims about their products and their environmental credentials that actually, when you scratch below the surface, maybe aren't as good as they could be.
Scratching below the surface, that takes a bit of effort. It takes a little bit of knowledge of what you're looking for, and let's be honest, that's not easy on occasions, because you may not know where to look. So here's the difficult question. Here's the difficult thing to do. How do you spot someone who is genuine and someone who is greenwashing?
Yeah, it's not easy. Because often those claims, unless you understand maybe the science behind what they're saying, that they've swapped one material for another, but sometimes swapping a material has solved the original problem, but it just introduces a different problem. I think really it's about having a sort of probably a healthy level of skepticism around the claims and not being afraid to ask questions. So, you'll often see a claim around a particular product where, where they've switched out plastic, for example. And then they'll say, well, this is now recyclable or it uses recycled material. It's just about thinking about that. If what we see over time is a lot more products, they'll have mixes of different materials in them. The simpler a product is in terms of its material makeup, the more likely it is that it's going to be easy to recycle at the end of its life. As soon as you've got products with multiple different components, that just becomes a kind of a nightmare for the waste and recycling sector. So that business might say, oh, well, this part of it's recyclable, but ultimately, unless it goes into a system that can recycle it, that's where some of this stuff falls down. It's all very well saying it's recyclable, but does it actually get recycled? And that's just one example. There are a multitude of areas where there's a bit of a spin put on what the business is trying to promote, and it will downplay other elements of it. So I often see like products saying, we've switched this material, but then you see them being delivered in unrecyclable packaging. So, it's not the whole story, So I think it's just sort of starting to raise awareness and just thinking twice about what's being said and whether it stacks up.
So are there any authorities who have, benchmarks, schemes whereby they say, right, this is okay to use, this isn't, whereby, I'm sure England Golf have, well, you would hope that they would have those types of schemes in place whereby the people, the layman person who wouldn't necessarily know what was good or bad, at least there's some kind of a mark to say, yes, this is, and this isn't.
In terms of the golf sector, where the focus on sort of the environmental spotlight has been, is really on probably golf course management and, things like use of water, biodiversity, the actual management of green space, which obviously has a direct link with the environment. And it's been less so on products that go into the golf sector and that we all use. So that's where the kind of the minefield really is. And I think golf probably as an industry has got quite a lot of catching up to do. What we are seeing now is that there's new legislation around greenwashing. Previously, I guess the only kind of drawback for a business that was making these claims would probably be a reputational one. If they were called out, by customers or the Advertising Standards Agency. But as of April this year, there's actually new legislation coming in the UK where the Competition and Marketing Authority is actually able to apply some quite significant fines to businesses who are found to be making some of these false claims. Again, where it's difficult is understanding the science behind what's being said. There's a whole bunch of acronyms out there. There's things such as environmental product declarations. So over time, you'll be able to actually go and see that a product kind of adheres to some of these standards, but invariably finding those can be quite difficult. They're not front and center of that marketing speak that hits us.
So that's Jeff talking about greenwashing and also what companies can do to try and promote them. He's actually sent a message to Jeff as well, and I think you saw it, Aaron. So we're talking about what we were talking about earlier. So I'll just read out what he's mentioned. It said we were obviously talking about golf clubs and trying to get the right fit. And he said it would be nice to see an enlightened company, a disruptor, bring out a club subscription service. It can be bundled with a periodic fitting that ensures the clubs you use, not own, match your game. So he's basically saying,
that's a brilliant that's why I messaged straight away when we were watching that video, because I think that would be, as what I was talking about before, and the question you asked me, Steve, before was, have you had that conversation with members at the golf club about golf clubs and switching over straight away? That question right there from Jeff, like, that is the best comment you could possibly make. And for a company to come out and to do that, because what you could do is that company could bring out a set of golf clubs that every 2 years can be flipped over, sent back to the company, and they can reuse that gear, and then the player can then get fitted for the next set, but making sure the clubs still fit them. Then that next set goes out. Then the following 2 years they do for a subscription cost. That if you got players of today buying golf clubs that they're having to spend like £2,500 on a set. What if you were able to stretch that car payment, like a lease of a car, but it's a leasing of a set of golf clubs over a 2-year period of say £100 a month. I think that if you said to golfers, hey, right, you can have this full set, we'll fit it for you. For 2 years, it's going to cost you £100 a month. And they'll go, oh yeah, I'll do that. I think that would be, if one of the big companies wanted to do that, there would be golfers lining up down the street to get that booked in.
Okay, so going back to the point which we were talking about with Jeff there about greenwashing, things like that, fantastic idea, but there'll be companies out there who will try and manipulate those types of ideas. They'll try and manipulate the industry. They'll try and work their way in and false advertising. As someone who's tried to look at finding products out there, Alex, is that something you've encountered whereby you've had to look at the small print very closely?
Yeah,
is it the language, Alex?
All the time, and it's not just in golf, obviously. It's in every industry now. Anytime any company is trying to sell you a product, there might always be a little bit of, we use a recycled this and this can be recycled. And, it's really difficult with greenwashing, like Jeff says there, because how do you distinguish between this is a good product and this is a bad product for the environment and for sustainability? Because there isn't a criteria to say this is a certified positive product for the planet and this one isn't. It is really up to the consumer to make their own decision based on the fine print and the materials used and the place of manufacture, for example, as to if that's a sustainable product or not. So, we really are open to a lot of greenwashing because companies can manipulate consumer decision with certain wording and clever green labeling on their packaging, this kind of thing.
Because with the generation of today, Alex, you mentioned that. How many consumers, and I'm probably one of them, like I'll put my hand up, but how many consumers do you think of any product are really going to delve into products, languages that they're advertising, and are they really going to because I would say that the generation of today, they're too lazy to really do any research into products. Like I'm like the guys, the young kids of today have got no interest in doing that.
You're right, Aaron, but I'll stick up for them a little bit in the sense that there might be a little bit of laziness, but also it's buried as well, isn't it, Alex? Because it can be.
How deep is it though?
Yeah. And so I'll give an example. I'm sure while I'm giving this example, you think of an example yourself, Aaron, whereby you've gone and you've thought, well, actually, that's not what. So over the last few weeks or so, I've been looking to try and find some products, clothing in particular, to use as merchandise, to use as prizes for this year for the junior events that I'm running this year. And I found a website which had eco-friendly. So I went through the products and there was one on there and it said 20% recycled. And I thought, well, what about the other 80%? But it was in their eco-friendly range. And then there was another one which said 100% one product, I can't remember whether it was polyester or something like 100% recycled polyester. And then 100%, and then it said, but the other product wasn't recycled. And I kind of looking between the lines, reading between it, it was almost as if it was the collar was recycled and the rest of it wasn't. So you're like, well, hold on a second here. How much of the product is that? What, 5%? So 5% of it is recycled and 95% of it is not. That's my example whereby, and I was someone who was looking out for it. Aaron used the point there whereby a little bit of laziness. That's me looking out for it and thinking that's eco-friendly. Then I have to delve deeper to find out, well, actually, not really.
But are we all going to delve into it deeper? Like you've done some research there, you've read it, but then you've actually delved. How many consumers would actually go to that next level of information that they want to try and find. That's what I'm trying to say. It's not the fact that they're actually being lazy as per se, but you do some research, you do a little bit of research, but then you've got to go 2, 3, 4 layers deep in that information to actually find out. You go, yeah, actually, you know what? It's not actually that eco-friendly.
So, Alex, you are one of those products whereby, you know, we're going to be buying some products from you.
Yes, we are. We already have.
Yeah, exactly. You see, so your average consumer, when they come to you, are they asking those questions, or are they just assuming the fact that you are legit?
Yeah, I think there's a number of things we do to try and make ourselves legit. I think just going back quickly to the clothing thing there, Steve, like you bring up clothing is a really good example because, you know, there's various different types of materials that can be used in clothing now, and they all can claim to be a sustainable material. You know, is it 100% organic cotton where they don't use chemicals and fertilizers, or is it 100% recycled polyester, which is effectively melting down bottles and spinning them into small plastics to create a new fiber? So you know, in theory, there can be positives and negatives of both of those fabrics, but they can both have a label that says this is the green option, this is the sustainable option. So this is what I was saying, like there is no definitive, this is the best product or the greenest or the best solution to a lot of these product categories, if that makes sense. So, you know, and I'll definitely bring up a relative point there, or relevant point, sorry, is there used to be, or there still is, there are certifications that certain businesses can apply for to effectively really enhance their reputation as a green or sustainable business. And the example I would use is a company called B Corp, who, you know, was probably, I would guess, founded around about 10 years ago, B Corp. I'm not 100% sure, but, you know, B Corp worked with the companies that really prioritized, and this is something we use, people and planet over profit. They were a lot of smaller businesses, and they were companies that really focused on sustainable products, low emissions, you know, being carbon neutral companies with responsible practices for the workforce and minimum wage payments. And, you know, B Corp was really seen as a certification sort of 5 to 10 years ago as, I tell you what, if that company is B Corp, I would buy from them because they truly care about the sustainability of the product and the staff and the whole social values as well. Unfortunately, what's happened with that certification, and I'm happy to say this, is, you know, lots of big commercial companies have effectively bought themselves a B Corp accreditation. So you've got massive plastic producers like Danone, and we're obviously in the water space a bit with the ReWater product we distribute. Massive companies there, happy to name them, that sell millions and millions of PET plastic bottles a year, that have been awarded a B Corp certification as a sustainable business. Well, unfortunately, those companies are not doing everything they can to sell and produce sustainable products, but they've been given that accreditation. So like I said, and like Jeff said then, it is a murky world of greenwashing out there, and it's very difficult to get to the bottom of it.
So sorry, Steve. So the question I want to ask is, obviously, like Steve and I are both now, well, for myself, but now I'm working alongside you with
Yep.
starting my venture with my junior tour. But
Yep.
what just so for everyone who's watching this and want to learn more about, well, what do you guys do in the golf industry? Can you articulate and elaborate on a few like items that would be very widely used in the golf industry that you guys do?
Yeah, brilliant, Aaron. So we set the company up for the planet about 3 years ago. And that was me from my background in golf and continually going into golf retail spaces, as I said in a previous job, and talking about sustainability, seeing how many plastics were being sold through the golf shop, and just thinking, you know, there's a lot of talk from these clubs and a lot of criteria that these premium golf venues have got to meet to become an R&A certified venue to host the Open and that kind of thing, and products to actually solve these problems, like you guys have said, of what's being sold in the golf shops. So we launched 3 years ago, and it was really around providing golf clubs with things like water refilling stations for the golf course and recycling bins. And then our kind of first product, if you like, or flagship product for when we launched, was a brand called ReWater. And ReWater effectively is a bottle of water that is made from 100% recycled aluminium. So that kind of ticks a 3-step process there, where we say, like, the bottles are made from 100% recycled material. So they're extremely low emissions to manufacture the product in the first place because nothing new needs to be made. They're just remolding old aluminium that's gone through the recycling process. They've got a screw top cap. So unlike a can, they've got a screw top cap that can be refilled and reused numerous times. So people can refill it out on the golf course, keep it in their golf bag. And then the great thing about aluminium is that that material is infinitely recyclable. So for every bottle or 50 grams of aluminium that goes through the recycling process, providing that gets recycled, 50 grams of new or recycled aluminium can be produced to make one new bottle. So that is that kind of infinite closed loop of sustainability where we've ticked it from start to finish. And it really encourages as much reuse and refill as possible with these bottles. You know, we say up to 10 times, but the reality is that product can really be refilled and reused for weeks or months. And that really relates to Jeff's kind of product, I think, point on the first video there, that we've got to change our mindset around certain products. You know, we're so used to buying plastic, water as an example on this topic. We buy a plastic bottle of water. Historically, we drink it, we throw it away. You know, it's such a fast consumable item, and plastic wasn't designed to be recycled anyway. So there's a lot of emissions in that process. So that's one of the things we do. And, you know, I'm pleased to say we work with 60 golf clubs now minimum that sell ReWater as their bottled water choice in the golf shop. And that's just one product, right? That's just water in the golf shop. It's a small part of what these guys do. But, you know, we believe like, it's millions a year really of plastic bottles that get sold in through golf venues in the UK.
So you're talking about the product there. What about, because when I've looked, we also mentioned Golfing Green with George. George is not here obviously to explain more about what she does there, but the Golfing Green website basically has a website on there, and she's gone out there and tried to source as many different companies out there who she feels meet that criteria. You know, she's obviously done the research, and I went on there and I was looking for all of the companies. And a lot of those companies were overseas. So I'm thinking to myself, and I'm sure this is the same with Aaron when he's been thinking about what he would like to do. And I'm sure it's the same with yourself, Alex, in that, okay, that's a recycled product. Great, fantastic. But it's coming from China. So I'm kind of like defeating what I'm trying to, you know, I'm kind of like, you know, chopping one leg off to say, you know what I mean? Is that something where you have to factor in as well when you're thinking, well, that looks like a great product, but is it any better than what I could get in this country, for example?
Yeah, 100%. You've got to consider, like we said, of all the things that you might want to look into, certainly consider where the product is made is a really good start, because there's emissions involved in where the product and how the product is made, but also the shipping of the product as well to get it to the UK or wherever it might end up being consumed. Then you move on to the materials. What material is being used? You know, our kind of process with that is, how is it being done traditionally in the golf industry and how can we make it more sustainable? So on location, like with bag tags would be a good example for you guys, for the junior tours. So historically, I thought I'd drop that in there.
Well done, Alex.
Teed me up. So like historically, you know, bag tags could be made from plastic and you know, all sorts of different materials, and even the wooden bag tags, for example, actually, if you look into the material that's being used there, they're actually manufactured in China or in the Far East somewhere, and they claim to be bamboo, but actually it's probably a small percentage of bamboo with glue and resin and plastic that's actually forms the majority of that bag tag.
Shall I give an example of what I read on? I'm not going to name a website because I can't remember what the name of the website was, but I remember reading that and them say, and the wording they used next to it was, because it comes from bamboo, where the bamboo is grown, was their line.
Yeah,
and I just thought,
greenwashing, Steve, greenwashing.
Absolutely, yeah. Straight away, I thought, okay, you know, you know, this is someone who works as a journalist. That's clever marketing as well.
Clever marketing, but completely unreasonable and irresponsible, I would say. So on the bag tags, you know, location, where can we get these made? So actually, we work with a brilliant manufacturer based in the UK in Sheffield, using English Ash FSC certified wood from within 30 miles of the factory. So we've narrowed down the location to UK, and it's being manufactured in the UK. Great news. And the material, well, we're using renewable wood sources from within 30 miles of the factory of where they're produced. So, you know, that is probably a really good example of where we're just trying to go away from this historic purchasing of products from the Far East with materials that we don't really know that much about to, yeah, look, these are probably going to cost you a little bit more than something that was purchased previously or is manufactured overseas, but the quality of the product and the sustainability of the credentials of the product far outweigh any purchase from overseas, in our opinion.
That sounds like the bag tags that I'm getting, Alex. What
Yeah,
you just
they might be, yes. There they are. Yeah.
Actually, just on the point of cost there, because obviously that is a factor which people have to bear in mind. People, you know, at the end of the day, we all have to make a living in some way, shape, or form. Now, what I did notice when I was looking for the clothing is the fact that actually the clothing costs are very similar for the recycled stuff than if you went down the line of just a normal thing. So I was thinking, well, actually, this is not going to cost me anything more, you know. And I was thinking, get that message out there to people: the fact that this isn't going to cost you 3 times as much to go down the sustainable route. Is that something which you have found, Alex, whereby it's not as expensive as people might think it is?
Again, my skepticism there is, why isn't that more expensive? Because in theory, that premium materials, sustainable materials, whether that's aluminium as opposed to plastic in the bottled water world, tends to cost you a lot more than the way it's done historically. So my skepticism would say, well, actually, if I'm seeing a product there that claims to be super green and super eco-friendly, but it's actually not that expensive, I'd be triggering thinking, I'm not sure if that's legit. That would be my first thought there.
Yeah.
Because you know, unfortunately, what tends to happen with sustainability is, certainly in production, is if you move production to the UK away from production overseas, we pay higher wages, materials cost more, the product is going to cost more, right? So clothing's a really difficult one, and there's a lot of products that are really difficult because we just don't manufacture a lot of products in the UK. You know, we don't have the industry and the engineering anymore, unfortunately.
Which is surprising.
Which is a shame. You know, it's such a shame.
Do you want me to mention some products as well, which has surprised me, the fact that there isn't anything out there? Amazed me the fact that I think I only found 2 companies which did head covers. And I'm thinking, how much was it? Okay, you work in a golf shop, Aaron. How much would a head cover cost to buy? Someone comes into your shop and says, wants to buy a head cover.
Well, it depends on where, because I'll tell you now, you go to like a Royal Portrush, or you go to a Royal St Anne's, a Royal Liverpool, you're going to pay, like, for a driver head cover, you're going to pay 35 to 40 quid.
Yeah.
Well, I reckon more than that as well. Yeah.
Well, I mean, but it's funny you do say that, because I actually used a company based up in Scotland that have done like logoed stuff for me for my ACE Academy. But they've outsourced that to overseas. So you're spot on, Steve. Like, although it's a company in the UK, it's still outsourced.
Yeah, but my point was the fact that I just look, my naivety of the clothing industry and the you know, sewing and whatever. I'm originally from Leicester, you know, where, you know, massive clothing industry in Leicester and in and around there. And I'm just thinking to myself, surely someone can make a cloth head cover, and it's not going to cost £35 to make a cloth head cover. Surely someone can make that out of recycled material. Surely there's a company out there which can do that, and there's a market there because there's no one else doing it. So you're almost immediately, you're the market leader if you can do that.
Yeah, there'd be a niche market for that.
Yeah. Do you know anyone who might be able to help me out, Alex?
Yeah, I know you're definitely right, Steve. There are companies up in Scotland that, you know, they'll manufacture their product up in Scotland for that kind of thing. But you're paying for it, like, you know, a knitted head cover with a golf course logo on from, you know, that is manufactured in Scotland. Yeah, I reckon your driver head cover, you're way over 50 quid, Aaron, for something like that, you know. And then it all comes down to the commercials, doesn't it? You know, we're fighting up against a lot of brands that just get their products made overseas, and we know that the cost is a lot cheaper. So they, you know, if you go in the golfing absolute top end sustainability product that ticks all those boxes, you just have to be, those companies have to be super careful that they're not really isolating themselves to such a niche buyer that their company doesn't exist anymore. You know, it's really, that's really difficult.
Aspect, that commercial aspect, you like for a head cover, if you like, I went over to Ireland straight after COVID, and I went up and played Royal Portrush, and this was like straight after the Open, and I bought myself a head cover, and it cost me 35 quid, but it cost me 35 quid because it literally had the logo of Royal Portrush on it. That's technically what I was buying, was the logo of a Royal Golf Course on a head cover that was probably made for a pittance that then gets sold for a massive markup because of a logo. So it is hard to find that, because you're right, Steve. In the golf industry now, driver fairway woods hybrids will be made by the major companies, and a head cover gets sent with it. Where can you buy covers of the brands that are out there? They don't make. These companies do not make spares. I see it day in, day out when I've got new golf clubs coming in, and the head covers come on the driver or the fairway wood or the hybrid. Someone loses that. They go, oh, I've got this driver from last year. Any chance you can get me a head cover? Sorry, pal, can't help you.
Yeah, I think the good thing, especially with head covers, is, and the great thing with a lot of industries, the second-hand market is really thriving at the moment.
Oh yeah.
Cars, golf clubs, whatever it is, eBay, Vinted. There's a lot of websites. A lot of companies, Cash for Clubs. Lots of. Yeah, Golf Bidder, Cash for Clubs, Clubs for Cash. There's two of them. The second-hand market is thriving. I'm sure what we would certainly recommend to people like that, if you lost your hybrid head cover and it's tailor-made, jump on eBay. Somebody's bound to be selling a tailor-made hybrid head cover on there that's second-hand used, absolutely in great, fine condition to do the job for what you need it to do. We certainly don't need to be buying new products and trying to, it comes down to the company thing. Like our opinion is people and planet, not profit. Don't buy it new unless you absolutely have to buy something new. Just continue to reuse and buy secondhand if you can.
Yeah, it kind of comes back to Jeff's point about the circular economy. I'm just going to go just quickly because we are going to hear from Jeff again. You're going to ask a question, yeah, Aaron?
I was just going to just a quick question was, what's your view on like golf tees? Because obviously we have wooden tees and then the plastic tees and the plastic castle tees. Now every Tom, Dick and Harry member that I know here at Blackwell, they use like the plastic tees. Now me personally, I always have and always will. I use wooden tees. Well, what's your take on that in the ways of sustainability for long term, because they come in a plastic bag as well?
Yeah, and actually, so we sell bamboo tees on our website. Like anytime you can remove plastic, I would say it's generally a good thing. Like we know, plastic can take 500 years to biodegrade. Those coloured plastics, especially, can't be recycled. They make the golf course look messy. They don't look good on the tees. So. Yeah. Look, is switching to from plastic to bamboo definitely a good thing? I wouldn't say it. I know 100% sure that it definitely is. Bamboo golf tees are typically made in China. That's where the bamboo is grown, and that's where golf tees are manufactured and made, just purely based on cost of material and cost of workforce to be able to do that. So
wooden tees break and snap very easily.
Break. Do I think there's a great solution? I think of the tees thing as like the emissions as well. Anything that gets manufactured in China, we're always trying to move away from that. So like we would never claim, bamboo tees are the absolute best thing for your game and for the planet, because we're in the UK and they're made in China. So they're definitely not the best thing for the planet. If there's anything we could manufacture here in the UK. So interestingly on the tees, like we're actually doing trials at the moment of tees that are made from seaweed with a company called Notpla. They won the Earthshot Prize that Prince William and King Charles do grants for about 3 years ago, and effectively they use surplus seaweed to manufacture packaging and rigid products now. So we partnered with them about 12 months ago, and we're still going through the process of testing these golf tees to try and make them stronger and more durable so that they last longer. But the great thing there is they can be made in the UK and in the EU as well. So suddenly we've got a really nice material there that is using no fossil fuels to manufacture that product. It's all green energy and surplus products that regenerates really quickly. Plus they're being manufactured a lot closer to home. So we've cut down a lot of emissions from shipping from China and shipping from the Far East. But then the whole reusability thing comes in. Well, actually, if they break every time I hit them, I've done all these good things, but now I've got a single-use product. So I'm really keen to get these tees up and running, but the argument then would be, well, my plastic tee and my bamboo tee last me 10 hits with a driver or a round of golf from a couple of tees, whereas I'd need 9 or 10 tees for a round of golf. So it's just, again, it's like, what is the best way of doing something? And
I'll be your tester, Alex.
Is there I'll send you some, yeah. I love the message.
Just on that point, I'd be completely useless to do this test, because this is genuine. This is what I do when I go on a golf course. I stand on the first tee and I look around to see if I can find an old tee. I stick it in the ground and I use that tee up to the point whereby it's completely unusable, and then I find another tee. And if I don't find one, I'll probably look on the next tee regardless. So I just use the old tees which have just been left in the ground. That's my take on it. So.
For you, Steve, man of the planet, right there.
Trying to find a long one to hit my driver, so I don't hit too many drivers. That's the only thing. So, right, let's hear from Jeff then, because obviously we're going to hear a little bit more about what you do for the planet a little bit later on. But let's hear what Jeff did with EcoWow, and also another scheme he set up a little while ago. This is what Jeff had to say.
Garage to Green was a scheme that I set up in Scotland. When I set up my own business back in 2016, it gave me a little bit more freedom to kind of explore areas of work that I wanted to get involved with. And Scotland being the home of golf, I've always been a lover of golf. We were able to get some funding to look at effectively a take-back scheme for golf clubs. So we used it to say, right, to stop all these golf clubs just accumulating, within people's garages, sheds, until ultimately they just clear them out and throw them away. Can we kind of recover those and get them back into sort of encouraging new players, that type of thing? So we set up the scheme in a couple of areas of Scotland around Glasgow and Inverness. We worked with a charity partner who gathered in the golf clubs, but also with golf courses themselves, because we wanted to make it as easy for people to drop off golf clubs. So members of courses, when they changed or switched out some of their clubs, they would be able to just drop off their old clubs at the course, and we'd periodically bring them in, sort through them, grade them, and effectively try and redistribute them out through a range of avenues, back into either academies or resale through things like eBay and charity shops. And really just to get to grips with what can be done with old golf clubs. And it'll be similar for other sports, as you might imagine. These things just tend to get thrown away once they're perceived to get to the end of their life. We wanted to see if we could give them a new life.
That's particularly relevant for junior golfers, because with junior golfers, they would tend to grow out of their equipment quicker than an adult would, because they're growing.
Exactly. And, what fits you, and I mean, I suppose it's fair to say, even as a golfer grows and develops, their physical ability for the game changes, both through junior golf and into adulthood. So, what was the right set of clubs at a point in time may not be in the future. Obviously, the problem is if we're wedded to this sort of buying something and then keeping hold of it, whether we're using it or not, all of that energy and investment that went into those clubs, it kind of is just sitting there. And as they get older and older, they get to a point where they have reached their end of use. So I think, with junior clubs, it's about using them and then redeploying them. And obviously for your average, say, parent, have they got the time when that child maybe has grown out of those clubs or maybe has sort of lost interest in golf? They'll want to try different sports to make sure that they get back on eBay. There's a healthy market for junior golf clubs, but maybe we need to look at other options. And there are businesses out there that are now starting to do such things like golf club rental. And certainly most local driving ranges and courses, you would hope they'd have sort of starter sets that you can borrow, at least whilst, a child may be thinking, do I really like golf? Do I want to go beyond just hitting a few balls at the driving range?
Am I right in thinking the Garage to Green is not running anymore? Is that correct?
So it was a trial project. It had funding for a number of years. And ultimately, what we did from that is use it to gather a lot of data about the types of golf clubs that get handed in. Invariably, most of them aren't junior clubs. And I guess this is an issue. When you run a scheme like that, you ultimately are at the mercy of what gets handed to you. So we used it to look at both the evolution of golf clubs over time. And one of the key issues that kind of came up was the sort of introduction of graphite shafts. So historically, all types of golf clubs would have had steel shafts, and steel is quite readily recyclable, whereas graphite certainly isn't. It's very difficult to find a commercial outlet for that. And that kind of led on to the product side of the business that we can maybe talk about, which was trying to find some markets for those redundant golf shafts that are made out of graphite, because ultimately we didn't want anything being disposed of that we'd collected in through the scheme.
Okay, well, you alluded to it there. Just explain what that moved into then.
Yeah, so what we did is effectively then I worked with a university in Manchester, and we went through a kind of a design process, which I suppose any sort of product designer would do. But we were kind of saying, right, we've got this component and this product and this material. Rather than break it down and try and turn it into something else, can we just effectively repurpose it? So we took the shafts from golf clubs, the graphite elements, had to do quite a lot of work to look at what's the variation in lengths, measurements. What could we effectively turn those components into where we just maintained the integrity of the original item? And I mean, graphite and related materials are amazing, that they're lightweight, strong, flexible. They do last a long time. And invariably, if somebody throws a golf club out, unless it's actually snapped, it tends to be the head of the club that's worn, or obviously the grips. They will have been replaced over time. Many of those shafts remain intact. So we effectively went through a process of saying, right, what could we do with them? And one of the products that we kind of developed is a new chipping target that creates a tripod of 3 of those old shafts and then puts a fabric wrap around it. So it was trying to keep those components within golf, to turn them into another product that golfers might want to use. And ultimately, it's a chipping target that we called EcoShot.
There's a single one. There's a duo one that you can buy. So anyone who wants to get involved, how do they get in touch with you?
Yeah, so there's just a website, www.ecowow.co.uk. I've also on Instagram, EcoWow Products, where I've shown using those products. We've worked with Tommy Fleetwood's Academy, getting them to do some testing with the kids on the products. So yeah, anyone can get in touch. We're keen to work with driving range and the likes of the sort of schemes that you run, Steve, just to try and get kids engaged in golf. We've made them in fun colors, bright colors, just to help them develop their game and like I say, keep some of this stuff in use rather than it being just thrown in the bin at the end of its original life.
So there's Jeff Sampson talking about his products there. I told you your golf clubs in your shop at the back of your office there, Aaron, they could be made into some products, couldn't they? By the way, if you look at the screen there, the bottom left-hand corner, that's what the product will look like. That's with a cat inside it. Don't suppose you get the cat as part of when you buy the product, but that's the chipping nets which he makes.
He makes a good point, Steve, because there's a point there with like junior golf clubs and all that stuff, and parents when they come and learn golf, is that like I've got a heap of junior clubs and I get them to use my clubs when they first start, because the first things I say to the parents is, look, if you don't have golf clubs, fine, don't worry, come and use mine. Make sure that the kids enjoy the golf, enjoy the process of learning about the golf game and about the golf swing, and making sure they get into it before they really go out and start dropping money on golf clubs. So I say, because I do my junior classes over a 4-week block, I normally say to the parents, get them through the first 3 blocks, which is 12 weeks, 3 months of junior golf, of learning the process of golf, before you even then contemplate buying them a golf club, let alone a set of golf clubs.
Now, Alex, you did obviously allude to what you do with For the Planet and everything like that, but just explain a little bit more than about how we gave Jeff the opportunity to plug his company and how people can get involved. How can people get involved with For the Planet? Then what can they
get in there, Alex?
A really quick one first on Jeff's with his golf clubs there. I visited one of our partner golf clubs a couple of weeks ago, and they've been planting some new young trees around the golf course there, and we're actually using old golf club shafts as stakes for those trees. For young trees, and I thought, what a great idea. I mean, it looks great on the golf course, and so much better than buying 100 stakes. They basically just used 100 old golf clubs, took the head off the club, and just put the shaft and the grip into the ground and wrap the tree around. I thought, what a great shout that was. So yeah, that was that. For the Planet, we're marketing ourselves now as the home of sustainable golf. So for any golf clubs that are looking to improve their sustainability credential, improve their carbon footprint through a number of different solutions or products, even consultancy, and working with those golf clubs, we'd love to help. Like I said earlier, we work with sort of between 50 and 60 golf clubs across the UK now with some of the products that we distribute. That includes things like water refilling stations, recycling units, in particular things like bag tags, reusable bottles. In the golf shop, we sell our own brand of what we believe are nicely sustainable accessories with recycled materials and organic fabrics, that kind of thing, as well as distributing a couple of brands. So ReWater is one of those as well. So we're on a mission over the next 5 years to try and reduce as many plastic bottles from landfill as possible, and numerous other things. If it's sustainability and we can do it, and we believe there's a more sustainable way than the current practice of how it's been done in the golf industry, then we'd love to get involved. So things like the seaweed golf tees that we're developing currently. There's loads of ongoing projects, and yeah, I think our where we see ourselves in 12 months' time is a real hub for golfers, golf events, corporate days, golf clubs, professional shop owners to come to our website and find out how we can help them improve their sustainability credentials, and work together. Yeah.
All right, let me explain a little bit about what Progress Junior Golf, what we're trying to do this year, and some of the challenges which we faced. We've touched upon them earlier about trying to get clothing and merchandise and that type of thing as well. But what we're looking to do, it's kind of been growing on me over the last year or so, whereby I've run a lot of events and I've always wanted to do the sustainability side of it, but never really, if you like, had the balls to do it. I didn't really know where to start as far as that. But from the start of this year, I've basically gone down the lines of, right, let's try and do everything we can. If there's any kind of angle whereby we can go, yes, we can do sustainable with that. So, for example, I went to a conference of greenkeepers, and I need some tee markers to go put halfway down the fairway. I know Aaron with some of his events runs where you send the players off 150 yards or something like that, as opposed to the normal tees. So I needed some tee markers, and I just thought to myself, so I went on the internet, can I buy some? Yes, of course you can. It's probably going to cost me about £20-30 per tee. And I'm like, well, that's going to cost me X amount of money. So I went to a greenkeeping conference, put my hand up and went, has anyone here got any tee markers that they don't need anymore? And the Nuneaton Golf Club said, yes, we've got stack loads in our shed. They've been there for years. Don't use them. Great. Got some tee markers for free. So that's one way of recycling. So going back to what Jeff was saying earlier about, it was designed to be a tee marker. Keep it as a tee marker. You don't need to change the product. Keep it going as it is. Then I went to the Leicestershire Golf Club, and they have said they're going to put my logo on it. So once again, they're going to put my logo on it. So therefore, not costing me anything. Recycling the same product. You mentioned earlier, Aaron, about trying to get your product out there in the sense of the big names and things like that. Well, why don't we have our name on it? Why don't we have our product, logo on there? So once again, and it's simple things like that whereby you can engage golf clubs. And when I was talking to that golf club, the Leicestershire Golf Club, they said, how about we can make some trophies for you? You know, we've got some trees which might fall down. We'll make some trophies for you. So hopefully, fingers crossed, touch wood and all that type of thing, they might be able to make some trophies for me for this year as well. So little things which we just, you know, whereby it you know, might save me, I don't know, 15, 20, 30, 40 pounds, whatever it happens to be over the course of the year. And that's when you can then put that back into junior golf. So just these, you know, we mentioned earlier about the cost, it might cost more to get some of these things, but when you get people on board,
they last longer.
It lasts longer. It means you don't have to buy it again. It means you know, you can save some money in the long run, you know, and these are the types of things whereby I think that the golf industry can help each other out. And you know, I'm more than happy and willing to big out, you know, and say, well done, thank you very much to the Nuneaton Golf Club, thank you very much to the Leicestershire Golf Club. But if anyone else wants to help out, not just for myself, but any kind of junior organisation, you know, we mentioned earlier about golf clubs, you know, I remember there's a golf club near me whereby they had a situation whereby if you got to a certain age and, you know, your golf clubs were too old for you, give them back to the club and they'll give them to the next person who's you know, 7, 8 years old, and they have them for 2 years, and then after 2 years they give them back to the golf club. So no one's buying any golf clubs; they're just using the same set of clubs. And you know, I'm sure you have this. You could have the same situation in your club, Aaron. Those golfers who are using them at the moment, in 2 years' time, pass them on to the next lot, you know, and there are
100%.
ways whereby you can recycle. Right, we're going to cover the news in next because what we normally do on the show. Just one last thing as well, because Jeff did get in touch. I'll just show you the message which he sent through to us. Obviously, he was talking about the sustainability of the clothing. So whilst the golf top may claim to have some RPT, RPET content mixed with lycra, it then becomes unrecyclable afterwards. Yes, it has some sustainable content, but it's not circular. So even these types of things, even now I'm learning. So for example, when that message came through, I went straight onto Google. What does RPET mean for a start? Can you explain? Do you know what it means, Alex?
It's so our PET or PET is plastic. So RPET effectively is recycled plastic or recycled polyester, typically when it comes to clothing. And that's really interesting point that Jeff's made there. I was kind of thinking this when we were discussing the clothing, and Jeff did mention it in his video. Actually, like the more materials you put into a certain product, you're probably not going to be able to recycle it or do anything with it at the end of the life cycle. Bit like the aluminium when it comes opposed to a carton that's got plastic and foil and cardboard on the outside. Mixed material products can be really difficult to recycle. So yeah, it's good to see some companies effectively might be lowering some emissions by using some recycled polyester as opposed to lots of oil and high emissions to make new polyester. But it probably needs to go the whole way to 100% if they're going to do something with that product at the end of the life cycle. And just quickly on clothing, so we're actually, I've always been a bit reluctant to do this until we found a really nice sustainable way of doing it. But we, in a few weeks' time, will be launching a very minimal range of t-shirts, jumpers, and hoodies for golf, which the material we're using for that is 100% organic cotton, which uses obviously less chemicals and fertilizers and oils to manufacture that material. The product is made in India. We're fully transparent about that. And then it's printed in the Isle of Wight with a company in the UK. And there's loads of sustainability benefits with that, is because we're using 100% organic cotton, all of the t-shirts and jumpers that we're going to be selling on the website have got a QR code in them, where at the end of the life, whenever someone determines they're not going to wear that product anymore, they can actually send the product back to the manufacturer and receive store credit towards a new product. So we're really a bit like Jeff says in his comment about the circular life cycle of a product. Yeah. It's the closest thing we can find at the moment towards that circular economy, where at least I've always been reluctant to do it because it was always that fast fashion ethos, and you buy something and what do you do with it at the end? But we've actually got a pathway now where the clothes can be sent back to the manufacturer and then they can be upcycled into new products again. Plus, with this company that's based in the Isle of Wight, I'm doing a really big plug for at the moment. Everything is print on demand. So we can design the t-shirts, design the jumpers. We've got some samples. But but we don't hold any stock. So there's no flash sales, there's no clearance to ship mass product away. You know, when we receive an order for a T-shirt, it goes through to the company in the Isle of Wight who print that T-shirt and send it direct to the consumer. So it's a really different way of thinking about clothing and how it's done, and something that we're super excited to launch in a few weeks' time. Yeah.
Just a point, actually, it's a conversation me and Aaron had yesterday. We were talking about prizes and how we distribute and what we do with prizes. How do we avoid, or what's your take on, if we're giving out prizes and that person doesn't want the prize, what happens to that prize? You know, does it go to waste? You know, it's all well and good as giving a recycled prize to someone, but if they're not going to use it, are we better off, you know, just going voucher wise and say, you pick what we've got. We've got all the recycled things. You come back to us and say, that's what we would like. Is that a better option than just giving a prize out?
I think it can be. Yeah, I think it can be. I mean, if somebody wins let's say a dozen golf balls as a prize, and it might not be the golf ball that they use when they're playing golf, I mean, the reality is they're probably going to give those to a secondhand website, you know, so they'll probably be a user for that product anyway. But I do think vouchers are definitely a good way to go. It's obviously nice to receive a prize when you're out and about and at a golf event, especially a junior event, you know, but the freedom of then being able to spend a certain value on a product that you definitely need and you definitely want to use, and something that you may have purchased anyway, is probably a better way of doing things, I think, to avoid any waste or anything that might get thrown away.
All right, let's talk about the news then, because we've had not been too many competitions, as you can appreciate this time of the year, but there has been some competitions, so we will go through those. You can stay with us, Alex, because I know you're a golfer, so you must enjoy it. So there's been some events taking place over in Ireland. The Irish Junior Open Tour, which Aaron knows very well. Michael Gallagher runs the Irish Junior Open Tour, very successful tour over in Ireland. The Tom McKibben Trophy was won by Mark Cadden. I've actually got a photo of Mark. Let's have a... There's Mark with his trophy. It's actually a very good goal for Mark. And he won with scores of 70, 73 and 68. 6 birdies in his final round, including a crucial one on the 17th hole. One on countback, actually. There's 2 other players who finished level with him. That took place at Knightsbrook. There was the Darren Clark Trophy, the second round of that. That was won by Sean Nolan. He also won the under-14s. Tiernan Duggan won the under-19s. And Ella Kenny won the best scratch score, though. But here's the story, though, from this event. Then, love doing this with you, Aaron. Right, Dara Horan. Then the Net Stableford. Then it was played over. So it was actually only played over 27 holes. So a round and a half. Stableford. Then, what do you think his winning score was? Then over a round and a half.
So Stableford. Okay, so 36 points and then 18. That's level. So you're 54. Looking, what's that? 54 points. 54 points for 27 holes. I'm going to say, the way you're talking to me, I'm going to say something stupid. I'm going to say 72 points.
What do you reckon, Alex? 72 points? Isn't that silly?
That's a lot. That's a lot. But I was thinking, I've played junior competitions. I've seen 50 points being scored before. Right. So if you can get 50, then maybe you can get 25 on the other 9. So I'll go 75. Okay.
Well, if I told you that actually they didn't play 27 holes because 2 of the holes were out of action, so it was actually only played over 25 holes, and his winning score
68,
91 points.
Oh
no,
91 points. All right. If you're talking about he started off with a net par, then he went 4 net birdies, 8 net eagles and 1 net albatross. On the second day, no net pars, 2 net birdies, 5 net eagles and 2 net albatrosses. 36 points over 9 holes on the second day. Hats off to Dara Horan for that score. Well done to him.
I mean, that's not even a false handicap. That's a mistake. That's a mistaken identity, surely. I'd
love to know how many shots kid lost off that handicap.
Yes. No, to be fair to Michael, as you well know, Michael plays off forward tee. So he keeps to say he lets them play off their handicap during the winter, but they play off forward tee. So but even so, well done to Dara there. Fantastic Amazing. Score. So
okay, Steve, the question would be then, next question quickly would be how many points did the kid win by?
Well, I looked at the scores for the under 14s and the under 19s. He was the under 11s. The score winning for the other two categories was 57 points. So he was 34 points ahead of the people who won the other two categories. So, but yeah, I think he won by a fair distance. Let's put it that way.
Comprehensive victory,
yes.
That is, yeah.
Right. Schools golf, then there was a competition at Farnham Golf Club. That was won by William Lawrence. Starting like poorly in the round and then really going for it. You know, first 4 holes, only three of the holes he only got 1 point on, and then eventually finished with 45 points. So, you know, good lesson for junior golfers out there. It doesn't necessarily how you start, it's how you finish. And that was someone who did exceptional there. And his school also won the team prize there as well. There was another schools golf event that took place at Notts Golf Club, Hollingwell, which I think you've played before, haven't you, Aaron?
Yes.
Yes, very nice golf course. Once again, Gordon School there. I'm not exactly sure where Gordon School is, but they won both the team prize and they finished first and second. Louis Tan won that. He won with 46 points. How about this for a start then, yeah? So he started off net birdie, birdie, eagle, eagle, birdie, 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 birdie. 27 points after 9 holes. And believe it or not, wow. 4 holes later, he was 2 shots off the lead. Some good scoring there. I mean, I played Hollingwell, and that's not an easy golf course to play.
No, I mean, I did a final stage of open qualifying there. It's not an easy golf course.
No. Beautiful golf course, but not easy.
Oh yeah.
Right, US Kids. They had a couple of events. One at Essendon Golf Club. Rex Picker Vance had the best score there, 2 under par. That's over 9 holes. And then they had another event at West Essex Golf Club, a lad who got mentioned in the last podcast in the news, and we'll remember his name because it was Rhino Salisbury won again. So well done to Rhino.
Oh, wow.
What a great name. And actually the girls' competition in both of those 2 competitions was won by the same player. That was Florrie Collins from Canvey Island Golf Club. You ever been to Canvey Island, Aaron?
I haven't. No,
Canvey Island. Steve. It's famous because it's actually below the sea level. So
that wouldn't help me, mate. I need to hit the ball as far as I can, so I need above sea level.
Yes. I watched a football match there, and the floodlights went out with 45 minutes to go in the match, and they had to call the match off. So I remember it well. Right, that's the news. There are not too many competitions. There's been a few junior opens taking place. Lincoln, Stockwood Vale, Tam Martin Heath. So a few golf courses.
Stockwood Vale. That's near me. 5 minutes from me. That is. Yeah, that's not far away. Yeah,
I should have got the results. Should have got the results for that one then, shouldn't I? So slacking. Right, but we have got some competitions coming up in March. This is what we've got coming up. Anything that stands out there, venues-wise, Aaron, whereby you say, well, that's well worth playing?
Yes, Essendon, definitely. Renaissance. Bowood Park. Yes, definitely. God, there's a couple. Howley Hall. There's some Knights Hollingwell as well. North Berwick. Wow, geez. Yes. So Essendon, West Essex, Hollingwell. What else? We've got Howley Hall. We've got Oakmere, St Ives, Moulton Norton. That's actually up near me. Yeah. Renaissance and Bowood. They're probably probably close to the top 10. I would probably say.
Yeah, the big one there as well is the South of England Youth Boys Championship. It plays at Rye Golf Club, which I think is on the south coast. That is. So
imagine being a kid, being able to get your hands on the golf course at Renaissance. Imagine being like a 10, 11-year-old kid and teeing it up where the Scottish Open is being played. Like, that's just so cool.
Absolutely, yeah. Now, coming up though this month and next month, we have got some massive events, haven't we, Aaron? Because we have got. We
do. Yes.
Tell me about them. So what have we got? First of all, quiz question for you then. What hole is that? And which golf course?
Put me on the spot. It's going to say that is Wearside.
It is, correct.
I can't tell you which hole because I haven't actually played the course myself.
Okay, well, I have played the course. That's the 16th hole. So there
16th hole.
Right, tell me about your events then. So you've obviously got 3 in April.
Round 1, April 17th, my junior tour begins. I'm getting nervous. I'm excited, but I'm extremely nervous. On April 17th, and then the 22nd, we're going to Wearside. And then the 23rd, on the day after, in the Easter holidays, we're going to Bishop Auckland. I've played that golf course many times, so that's why I was very, very happy to get that on the schedule. But yes, I'm excited, nervous at the same time. Alex has got some beautiful bag tags being made for me as we speak. And I'm looking forward to that, Steve. It's the point of, as I said, it's the first time I'm doing this as a tour. I've organised many events in the past 20 years, but to actually have my own junior tour, it's exciting, but also very nerve-wracking.
Right. Now, got to plug my events as well. So we've got the Progress Junior Golf events. First one takes place a week on Sunday. That's at Charnwood Forest Golf Club. Then we've got the Leicestershire. So great to go to a golf course, which is helping me out as far as the tee pegs, outside the tee markers, and also potentially some trophies as well. Forest of Arden, that's the main championship course. The photo there is actually the Forest of Arden there. Then we've got Handsworth Golf Club. Then we've got the big one, because Fulford. And why is it the big one, Alex?
Huge event. What are we calling that? The For the Planet Masters? I don't know, but it's the For the
Planet. That's a good name.
Absolutely,
For the Planet Masters.
So it's going to be a sustainability day. So we're inviting Alex along. George is coming along as well, hopefully. We're looking to see if we can get a few other sustainability companies as well. Hopefully Jeff's going to come along as well. It's going to be a day whereby we're going to be trying, obviously we've had a fantastic podcast here trying to give ideas, but it gives us the opportunity to actually talk directly to the juniors, directly to the parents about some of the things which we've discussed today, which, what kind of message, how are you going to try and get that message across to them, Alex? Because it can be complicated, as we well know. So how easy, so difficult could it be?
I'm going to say, first thing, when you get on the tee, don't get a new tee out, do a Steve and look for a tee. and if you're 5 minutes late for your tee time, it doesn't matter. Just try and find a tee that you can use for the rest of your round.
Oh, careful.
I'm joking.
5 minutes late.
Yeah, I haven't thought about it too much. Like we'll put some really good education together, I think, for the juniors that are playing. I think probably around products that they use and how they're maybe sourcing equipment, that kind of thing. But even even things like food and drink. Are they using plastic bottles, and what snacks are they consuming on the golf course? And even things like lift sharing, I think, is quite important. Like what how are you getting to the golf course? Could you possibly have lift shared with another family or another friend and something like that to maybe cut down on the emissions? So there's loads of things we can do. Yeah.
The other thing I have to mention as well is that obviously the schedule which I put together for the Progress Junior Golf events was put together towards the back end of last year. I'm already now looking ahead to next year and thinking, which venues do I want to go to? Are they sustainable venues? And is that something? How is that something whereby I can? Fulford Heath is very much behind this. I must admit, is the fact that when I mentioned about sustainability, they immediately, which amazed me, they sent me their sustainability manager at the golf club, and I'm like, wow. They have a sustainability manager at a golf club, and I thought, well, this is a club who knows what they're doing. So
that's forward thinking.
Absolutely. So straight away, I thought, well, that's a golf club whereby if the event goes well this year, definitely looking to go back there next year. But where do I look? How do I find that type of thing when I am trying to find a venue? What am I looking for?
Good question, Steve. There is a certification that's called the GEO Foundation or GEO Foundation. They certify golf clubs to effectively say that they are a sustainable venue. Again, like I think we were talking about earlier, I'm probably a little bit skeptical of that. I work with a lot of those GEO certified golf venues that I believe probably could be making some other changes to make themselves a truly more sustainable golf venue. Lots of them sell plastic bottles in the fridge and don't have recycling bins on the golf course, that kind of thing. Happy to talk about that. But yeah, that's a start point. Personally, I think if you speak to these guys, you'll gauge the appetite straight away for sustainability. If you speak to a club there and they say, "I'll put you in touch with our sustainability manager," and you'll get you'll know probably from the first point of contact whether you're probably on to talking to a sustainable golf club or not by the response you'll get, Steve. I would imagine. If it's we do care for the environment, then you might be up against it.
Yes, yeah. There's a golf course. I actually was looking today. There's a golf course which is mentioned on your video, which hosted an event which I ran last year, which is Colmworth Golf Club. So just give us a brief mention about what they do, because that is a golf course which is 100% into it.
Yep. So if someone was going to ask me, like, where do you think is the most sustainable golf club or sustainable golf venue in the UK, I'd probably say Colmworth. That's a family-run business. So again, that probably helps with the way that decisions are being overall thinking there at the golf club. But yeah, those guys are amazing with turf care. They only use organics on the greens. There's no fertilizers or chemicals or anything like that for the turf management. Tilly, the owner, actually said something to me that really landed a few weeks ago. She said, actually, it's the wildlife and nature's land out there, and we're just using it for golf. And I think actually, if you spoke to a lot of golf clubs, they'd say that's our golf course and that's our land, and we'll decide what the nature does on our land. You know, whereas their mission, their message is, you know, actually it's not our land. Like, the wildlife live out there. We live inside. Like, the wildlife live out there. So we'll do everything we can to make sure we protect what they need the land for. But there's loads of other things. You know, they home make all the cakes and stuff like that in the cafe, which is just lovely, instead of buying them in. There's so many things that club does. All the energy is run from biomass boilers with wood pellets. I mean, it genuinely is from start to finish. Everything is considered there. Is there a more sustainable way we can do this? And it's 100% worth a visit if you're ever in Bedfordshire or the area. Yeah.
They won an England Golf Award, and we all know about winning the England Golf Awards. It's easy, isn't it, Aaron?
Yes, Steve. Yeah, work your ass off, and then you get something like given to you like that.
Right. Okay. Just a quick mention as well for the Progress Junior Golf. The website now has got over 1,500 competitions on there. So I put on the website all the competitions you can play in the country. Look, I'm more than happy to push Progress Junior Golf events, Ace Tour events, whatever it happens to be. If you've got a junior golf event there and you want it out there and people to play in it, then please let me know and we'll put it on there. There are competitions. I think there are 240 just in April alone. So there are 240 competitions out there to play golf, junior events in the country, England, Ireland, Scotland, Wales. So if you want to find out where you can go and play in some events, then please go on there and find out what we've got for you. Right. Just one final thing then. So just to let you know what we may or may not have coming up as far as future podcasts. We might be looking at, well, I think we're going to be doing one on parenting, because I think that's an important topic. We're going to be doing one on girls golf. And we're also, might be excited about this, we might well be doing a joint podcast with a junior football podcast. They've been in touch with us. We've had a conversation about how the similarities and the differences between playing junior golf and you know, we mentioned when I was having a conversation with them, I was saying to them about sustainability. You know, at the end of the day, if you're buying kit for golf, you're going to be buying kit for football. Are you buying sustainable kit when you're, you know, that type of thing as well? You know, flags. I know that you got some flags donated to you. What about flags in football? You know, they have flags in football. You know, so there's
4. Yep.
So that's for the future. You know, lots of different podcast ideas which are coming up. Of course, the next one as well, we're going to be talking about what happens in our events, because the next one will be after that event at Chelmsford Forest and after the event at the Leicestershire.
Yep.
And we'll give you a proper preview as well for your events in April, Aaron. So hopefully you'll have a completely full field by then. So that's coming up, of course. Massive thanks then to Alex for coming on the podcast this evening. Jeff as well, not just as well for doing the interview earlier this week as well, but also putting a couple of questions to us as well and making my life more difficult because of some of the things which I thought I'd doing okay. I probably need to reassess, but that's fine. Look, at the end of the day, we're all trying to make things better and trying to get better advice about what we can and can't do as far as sustainability as well. And we will get Joyce Devane on as well at some point as well, where she can explain more about what she's doing. And you know, we're going to be looking to try and promote sustainability throughout junior golf on Progress Junior Golf throughout the year. So thanks so much for everyone for joining us, and we shall see you very, very soon. Thanks a lot.
See you guys.
See you later.